So, welcome. You have joined the webinar Right Trips at the Right Time, Organizational Decision Making Made Simple. This session is designed to help organizations who are running travel programs create frameworks and guide decisions on which trips to advance and potentially which trips to postpone or not do at all. So, for those of you who may be new to Elevate Destinations, I would like to introduce us in the organization. My name is Catherine Reddington. Elevate Destinations is a strategic travel partner for nonprofits. We collaborate with nonprofits, museums, zoos, museums, foundations, social impact organizations, and we manage mainly the logistical components of highly tailored journeys that advance an organization's mission or a specific goal for that organization's mission. We often act as extensions to development teams or event planners or travel planners at large institutions. We work closely with those staff. We spend a lot of time curating journeys with them, getting to know them. But we also do other things such as staff retreats for organizations. We do board retreats. We do charity challenges. And we also have a private travel team that works closely with nonprofits when they have, say, a major donor coming and they have a vacation. And all of a sudden, the nonprofit is tasked with planning a vacation and this donor visit. So those types of partnerships work very well also for our private travel team to take that weight off of a nonprofit. We have been running workshops for our audience for about 5 years. These sessions allow us to do deep dives into specific challenges related to sort of donor travel and explore solutions more fully. One of the most reoccurring challenges that some of our clients and wider audience have faced is their challenges around decision making on which trips to take place and when, and which trips to sort of push pause on. And we have found that some of our clients feel almost overwhelmed by the number of requests they're getting for trips, and that can cause a lot of stress. And then we have other clients that have such a lengthy decision-making process that often the ability to run a trip in a short amount of time puts an additional amount of stress on them because it's taken 9 months to make a decision, and then we only have 6 months to run the trip. So, the goal of this session is really to offer practical tools and approaches that help those involved in planning and navigating these decisions do so with more clarity and more confidence. And the two speakers I have here today, I'm really delighted to welcome because they have very thoughtful, in-depth approaches to how they have made decisions more seamlessly and comprehensively within their organization. They have some structures and frameworks, and I believe a lot of these are transferable to other organizations. So with that, I'm going to introduce or pass the mic over to our first speaker to introduce himself. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Jared, and I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Catherine. So glad to be here and excited to chat with this group. My name is Jared Scherer. I'm the Director of Donor Experience at the California Academy of Sciences, which is the Science Museum in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, where I've been working for almost 9 years, but pretty new to the travel industry and travel planning, which I've been doing for the last 3 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the program and the organization and all kinds of stuff in just a bit. And I will pass things over to Matt.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jared. Hey, everyone. I'm Matt Horst, and I run the travel program for EarthJustice, which is an environmental nonprofit. And I've been working there and with the travel program for about 8 years now. So I'm looking forward to sharing my approach to how we evaluate these trip requests, deciding how and which to proceed with, and also how to position ourselves as travel planners to be that strategic thought partner that's needed. And I'll pass it over to Catherine.
Great. Thank you so much. I wanted to say that our agenda today is to give both Matt and Jared some uninterrupted time to share their presentation. And then at the end, we're going to leave ample time for Q&A. I am able to unmute participants at that time. So if you have a question at that time, please raise your hands. I will unmute you and you will be able to ask your question. You can also write it into the chat. So if you have a question, just make sure you write it down so you don't forget. And with that, I'd like to send it back over to Jared to begin his presentation.
All right. Does that, can everyone see my slides up on the screen?
It's about to come up. It says you've shared your screen. There you go.
There we go. All right. Thanks, Catherine. So as I mentioned, um, I work at the California Academy of Sciences, and I oversee the Academy Adventures program, which is our travel program at the museum. And just to give you a little history about the Academy, we're a scientific and cultural institution in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park, and our mission is to regenerate the natural world through science, learning, and collaboration. We have an aquarium, a planetarium, a rainforest, an active research department, all under a living roof. And we drive solutions for a thriving planet. And part of what I do, it's part of my responsibilities is running the Academy Adventures program, which is our immersive travel program at the Academy, where we offer science-rich journeys, all led by Academy experts. And these trips connect our supporters to the natural world, deepen engagement, and bring the Academy's mission to life through place-based exploration. And so I thought it might be fun to tell you a little bit about the history of our travel program. Um, so we sort of have two parts to our travel program. We have the past travel program, and then we have the new travel program. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about both, which I think might be important to help ground where we came from and where we're headed, and how we've been making decisions around all of this. So, the program was originally established in 1969, making it one of the earlier museum-based travel initiatives of its kind, from what we could find. And for many, many decades, we offered our community a chance to explore the natural world alongside Academy experts. Before it was paused, the Academy was running 20 to 22 trips per year, and serving a wide range of travelers and members and connecting them deeply to science and conservation work around the globe. We took folks all over the world, Antarctica, Russia, Galapagos, India, Patagonia, you name it. We went there, which was really great. Um, and the last official trip went out in 2010. And so after more than 40 years of operating, the program went dormant, due to shifting organizational priorities and resource constraints. And the reboot that we're undertaking today builds on this legacy while modernizing the program for Academy's current mission and opportunities. Um, so why did we reboot the program? We rebooted the program in 2023 after about 13 years of the program being dormant. Um, and over those years, we saw a steady increase in donor requests for a deeper travel-based engagement experience, signaling a strong appetite for revitalizing our program. Um, Also, we updated the museum's strategic priorities and our mission, where we are now emphasizing community building, science, storytelling, immersive learning. Um, and I felt that that made travel a natural fit and a powerful engagement tool to align with our mission and, our vision for the institution. The other thing that was really helpful, is that our new executive director and chief philanthropy officer at the time both identified Academy Adventures as a high potential pathway for elevating donor engagement and strengthening long-term relationships. And so having executive leadership support to reboot and rebuild the program, really helped with organizational buy-in. So that was also, an important piece. So we're a small but mighty team. When we relaunched, a third of my time is dedicated to the travel program, and we now have a half-time program manager, which we call kind of we're in re-startup mode, just sort of rebuilding the program and figuring out, our pathway forward. So in 2023, we rebuilt the infrastructure, we reestablished partnerships with travel partners. We listened to donor feedback, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, really to help us shape a modern mission forward program. So in 2025, we have offered 6 trips. In 2026, we have 8 trips on offer to reflect kind of escalating demand and our capacity to organize these trips. I don't know if we'll get up to the 20 to 22 trips a year that we were offering at our peak, but you never know if the trips continue to grow and be popular. We're housed in the advancement team, our fundraising team at the Academy, which positions the program to ensure strong alignment with donor stewardship goals and helps us support cross-team collaboration. Donor stewardship at the core, we are bringing donors closer to our science, our impact, and the people who make it possible. We also offer the program to donors as well, excuse me, to members, not just donors, um, to help broaden our reach and cultivate a future donor pipeline as well. And each trip is our featured hosts are Academy scientists as our experts, which offers our supporters unmatched access, real field science perspectives, and a unique Academy experience. I also thought it was fun, since we do have this previous travel program, to show you some really kind of neat archival images of our old travel brochures, just to give you a sense of where we've been, how we marketed the program. I always like to kind of look back so we can look forward as well. So you can see some of these trip offerings from Patagonia, um, Scandinavia, the brochure on the right. I'm just looking at my other screen here. Shows some of the trips that we offered back in the 80s and 90s. Here's another sampling of our brochures from way back in the day, and you can just see all the robust ticket off the offerings that we had for the program as well. So I thought that was pretty fun. We have a huge Academy archive in the building, and I dug through it and dug out some gems. The next slide I want to mention is about our travel survey. So, to guide the thoughtful rebuilding of the program, we conducted a survey of donors, board members, staff, museum members, past travelers. We had a total of 87 respondents representing the full spectrum of our engaged community. And I thought that gathering this feedback was essential because it allowed us to ground our decisions in a clear understanding of what our audiences value, what motivates them to travel, and what they hope a revitalized travel program can offer. Um, so let's just show you a few of the things that we learned. We asked people if they could learn more about science-related topics, what would interest them. They said they want to learn more about marine life, ornithology and birds, and reversing biodiversity loss. We asked what types of activities would they want to see in Academy Adventures trip. They said hiking, local science-based education, and cultural experiences and sightseeing. And other than yourself, who would you be interested in traveling with? They said friends, partners, and children. All kind of cool data points. This also is something else that we asked about their activity level. People preferred, moderate activity level, their comfort level. We asked if they wanted a rustic experience, a sort of standard experience, or more of a luxury experience, and people are looking for sort of more of that middle of the road experience. And then the preferred trip length, which I was a little surprised about. I wasn't sure what people were interested in, but people preferred on the longer end of the trip spectrum. So that 8 to 14 day trip length. We also asked people if they could travel anywhere with their scientists, where would they go? The most popular choice was the Philippines. Madagascar, Galapagos, Iceland, Japan. We have a long history in the Galapagos, so it's not a surprise that that was one of the choices as well, which we were really excited to hear from folks. Which all of this is data that we're collecting to help us inform the structure of our travel program. So I think I skipped a slide. Okay, so your brand and your value proposition. I thought this was really important to understand your travel program's brand and value proposition. I think that's really important to help shape a compelling and strategically aligned trip portfolio. Because when you have clarity about what makes your program unique, whether it's access to scientific expertise, behind the scenes experiences, mission-driven storytelling, or immersive learning, you can more confidently determine which trips best reflect that identity and when they should be offered. And so I'm not going to read through all of these bullets, but these are the goals, outcomes, and objectives of our travel program to deliver transformational, mission-aligned travel experiences that offer unique access to local and global destinations while connecting participants directly with Academy scientists and our work to regenerate the natural world. The other important piece is to strengthen and deepen donor and member relationships by offering programs that reflect the Academy's strategic priorities and foster meaningful personal engagement with our science and impact. And we also have this cool mission statement, which is really great. We use this on our publications, on our website, in our emails, any outbound communications. We think it's really important to have a mission statement that's really easy to understand and that hopefully sets us apart from other travel programs. We know that supporters and donors, they're savvy, they like to travel, they have other options that they can consider when traveling, and we want to make sure they're choosing us when it comes to travel. So that's the mission statement. And then the thing that I think I'm going to spend just a couple minutes on is this particular slide. These are our data points that we've used to help inform developing our travel program. So I talked a little bit about our travel survey. We've also included donor requests and feedback, just anecdotally when we talk to people, what they're asking us for. We also took a look at some historically well-performing trips. We had 40 years of data to use in helping us figure out what resonated with our audiences. We were able to find some old surveys and some old performance data. We also looked at museum and advancement priorities. As I mentioned, that's a big piece of our travel program is making sure they're mission connected. Um, and what our goals are in our fundraising department. We're inviting donors to join our trip and hopefully re-engage them or engage them for longer periods of time and increase their support of the institution. As I mentioned also at the beginning of our presentation, our executive director has a big voice in where we're going and sort of participating in some of our programs as well. And so his feedback has been very important. Where is our scientists and faculty teaching and researching and studying? That's really important as well. The Academy Adventures Advisory Team. I'm going to talk about this on the next slide, but this is a group of travelers, board members, staff who meet regularly to help us inform and guide our program. We also took a look at, trip costing, geopolitical considerations. These are all important data points to consider as well. And then post-trip surveys, where what people are telling us, how they enjoyed the trip. Would they like to go back again? Would they like to bring a friend with them next time? That's really important as well. And then the last thing I want to mention is on joint departures. This has been really fun for us to develop relationships with other like-minded organizations that might want to bring their experts and their audiences together with ours to create a really strong opportunity to have a really amazing experience and learn from each other. So the right trips, the right data points. The three things I would say that we probably have used the most out of all of these data points is the travel survey results, our advancement and museum priorities, as well as the Academy Adventures Advisory Team input. And this last slide, and this is the last slide of my presentation, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the Academy Adventures Advisory team. Why did we create this? Well, we wanted to increase our stakeholder engagement and bring together some trusted thought partners around this program to help us inform and guide our program development, our marketing, our creative elements of the program as well. And to be completely transparent, I wanted some external voices and some buy-in from our colleagues, our board, previous donors and previous travelers, excuse me, and current donors. The advisory team has also been helpful in establishing some travel policies and procedures, as well as our trip concepts and destinations. And as I mentioned earlier, the board is made up of advancement colleagues, board members, active travelers, some past trip leaders, some current trip leaders, and Academy donors, which has been great. We meet 3 to 4 times a year for about an hour and a half in person over lunch. That really helps feeding people, and doing it in person has been really great. And I just want to mention, if you're thinking about creating an advisory kind of structure, just some advice to keep it fun and engaging, to listen and communicate well with your team, and to show them the results, right? People are part of this board, they're volunteering their time, and we want to make sure that, we're listening to them and that we're implementing some of their suggestions and then showing them the results of their work. Um, and that's pretty much it. That's our travel program. And yeah, I want to turn things back over to Catherine.
Thank you, Jared. That was fantastic. And I had two just quick follow-up questions for you. A lot of our clients do have their executive director go on one of their trips. I'm curious if you have some sort of internal decision making around where he's placed or she is placed on your trips. So I'll just start with that question.
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, our executive director is very excited and interested in the travel program. He has a travel background. He does research all over the world. And so that's made it really easy to get his buy-in because he understands the value of transformational travel. Um, so part of how we involve him is asking him where he wants to go, which is always a good start, right? Leave it really broad. And then the programs that he's led so far have been sort of on the higher end of the spectrum as far as costing and pricing. And so we've decided to offer those trips to our top donors, sort of at uh, there's not like a specific threshold, but generally it's around donors who are giving about $10,000 or more to the Academy, just to reserve special access to time with our executive director for those top donors. It makes it feel really special because it is. And it provides a really unique opportunity to spend, a week, 10 days with our executive director. So that's been really fun.
Thank you. And I just had another question about, you had mentioned joint journeys. Could you share a little bit more about that? I know a lot of our clients have been apprehensive of bringing sort of individual donors on journeys where two institutions are featured. So I'm just curious what your experience has been like that and why uphold that as such a success.
It's been great. So, yeah, I understand sort of maybe some of the apprehension and nervousness. We were nervous about doing that too. We were like, oh, we don't want to cannibalize our donor base, or if we have other organizations on this trip and they're talking about their work, they're no longer going to be part of our donor community. All of that for me was demystified when we actually did these joint departures. So, we've done joint departures with a few different organizations that are like-minded science organizations. We did one trip with a group called Sky and Telescope for an astronomy trip, and that was fantastic. We did another joint departure with a local group in the Bay Area called Seacology. We did sort of a diving coral reef trip. We're doing another joint departure with the Shed Aquarium to the Galapagos next in 2027. And I see this as an opportunity to bring together experts from both of your organizations to raise the visibility and cachet of the trip in some ways as well by saying, oh, there's other, kind of organizations that the Academy is linking arms with. That sounds pretty cool. I could benefit from hearing from these other experts from the other organization, interact and mingle with travelers from the other organization. And so far, the trips that we've offered that have been joint departures have sold out. And I'd like to think part of that is, and based on survey responses, has been because people have said, we wanted to join this trip because we wanted to, kind of expand and broaden our knowledge base and hear more from other experts from other organizations. So for us, it's been really great. Again, that could be really unique to your specific organization, but so far, so good for us.
And thank you for that. It's a new narrative that we're hearing coming from you, Jared, because a lot of people are too scared to do that, but I'm glad to hear you're having such great success with it. I do want to acknowledge someone asked a question. I'm just going to read it to you, Jared.
Sure.
And I know I want to save enough time for Matt to go because it's a really amazing process he goes through. But the question that came in is, can you give an example of a success story with the advisory team, a problem they helped you solve, a destination they convinced you to go to?
That's a great question. Um, One of the things that they helped us with was actually form our mission statement, which I thought was really great. That was a very iterative, collaborative process with the advisory team. We were trying to, and that sort of addresses sort of what we were trying to solve. We were trying to figure out what our value proposition was and how our program was going to be differentiated from other science organizations, other travel programs. And so having scientists, travelers, donors, board members, all part of the advisory team was really fantastic because I asked them what they thought they would be interested in joining our program and how um, and asking for their thoughts and advice on how to differentiate our program. And it culminated through the development of that mission statement that I mentioned earlier. And so that was really great. And then for destinations, um, yeah, in fact, ironically, we have our quarterly advisory team meeting just after this meeting today. So we're going to be talking about our 2028 destinations already, but in the past, they've helped us develop our California based travel trips, which have been great. We've also I'm trying to think of another trip. Oh, we've the advisory team has advised on some of our coral reef trips. So we're going to Palau in February based on our advisory team suggestions. We're going back to the Galapagos again because the advisory team said we really need to offer that more frequently. So we're doing that maybe on an annual basis. We're still figuring that out, but we're offering it. We offered it in 2025. We're going back in 2027 again and in 2028. So yeah, so the advisory team has been a great sounding board for us. Again, I want to mention advisory. I chose the name advisory team on purpose because they're providing advice and guidance, but they're not necessarily the final decision maker. That's really our team, the staff that runs the program, but they're more partners and thought partners around how we shape our program, and it's been great.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, advice versus final decision maker.
Yeah.
Jared, this was fantastic, and I think you'll have a few more questions at the end of this session. I want to pass the mic over to Matt to sort of go through his travel program and how they make internal decisions. So thank you very much, and on to you, Matt.
Great. If I can just get a thumbs up once that pops up on your screens. Perfect. Awesome. So before diving into our frameworks, I wanted to share a little bit about who EarthJustice is and how that informs the styles and goals of our travel offerings. So EarthJustice is the premier nonprofit environmental law firm, and we offer free of charge services to our clients that range from community members, sovereign tribal nations, local NGOs, and other large nonprofits. We have cases at the local, state, and federal levels with a wide array of casework from endangered species to climate and clean energy to pesticides to travel partnerships. And while most of our work is primarily located within the United States, we also have an international program as well. So our travel program is located within our development department and is geared to different segments of our donor audience that I'll touch on in the next slide. Our trips don't explicitly generate revenue for the organization, but they do serve as a critical cultivation, qualification, and stewardship tool for our fundraising teams to use. So that means like while we don't include profits to EarthJustice as part of the trip cost, nor do we make explicit fundraising asks during the trip, a donor's participation is a meaningful touch point in their overall story and relationship with the organization. We're still a relatively new program and plan approximately 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 trips per year that generally look like taking supporters to locations of our casework alongside local experts and our staff, primarily attorneys, and also love to include clients or allied partners whenever possible. And similar to Jared and Cal Academies, we also use a 12 to 18-month planning timeline that proves crucial for providing enough time to recruit guests and also gives me a better insight into what my future capacity can look like. Our travel program currently consists of 3 sub-programs, which all have the overarching goal of providing, as we like to say, that aha moment that ties guests' support to the tangible real-world impacts of our casework and deepens their connection to EarthJustice, our clients and partners, and the broader environmental justice movement at large. So we've got 3 sub-programs that consist of Explores, which is geared to our mid-level and plan-giving audiences, and Elevate, which is geared to our major and principal gift level audiences. And you can see some unique aspects about each of them there. And those are also all pre-planned journeys that are then marketed to the respective donor constituencies. Our 3rd sub-program, on the other hand, is a private travel program that consists of custom bespoke trips planned for specific supporters, foundation funders, and the like. So these trips are tailored to the goals and desires of that audience. So there's more personalization on the destination, itinerary, and programmatic conversation front. It's also an area that we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm in and are therefore leaning in on the decision-making frameworks to help guide us through that process. So before I go into how we determine which trips to move forward with, I wanted to share a little bit about where our trip requests typically come from. So that list is ranked in order of most to least common, with the majority of our new trip requests coming from within the organization, followed by board members interested in hosting a trip or for their network or a similar audience of supporters, and finally, sometimes by prior trip attendees who may express interest in new destinations. The majority of our staff requests come from fundraisers who are either interested in crafting a travel experience for specific donors in their portfolios or are passing along an already expressed interest from their donors. We also sometimes receive trip requests from members of the organization's leadership, as well as attorneys who typically following their attendance on a trip and seeing how the flow of activities and programmatic discussions and general organization of the journey work, that might give them ideas of what other casework might translate well into a multi-day travel experience. And finally, from a timing perspective, these requests could come through on an ad hoc basis when a fundraiser or supporter has a travel idea, or twice a year when we hold a biannual planning check-in for our donor events and trips. And I'll include a reminder to all fundraisers to submit any concepts that they might have simmering on the back burner. So after or as part of receiving a trip request, we have 3 established processes that we use for evaluating the request and determining which to move forward with. And I'll go into more depth about each of those right now. So the first one is we have an internal trip request form that's used to discover more details about the proposed idea and ensure the requester is thinking about all the necessary information. This form is available to all members of our development department, and it also signifies the beginning of our consideration process. Our goal is for the travel program to be viewed as a strategic partner for crafting these immersive experiences and helping achieve our colleagues' goals to steward and solicit their donors. So this is the first step at reinforcing that partnership with them. This might be the first time I'm hearing about a concept if a staff member submits the form without prior notice, or I might direct a fundraiser that's interested in a trip to this request form to help guide their thinking. It's also very helpful for sifting through those like nice to have trip requests where a donor simply expressed interest in potentially hosting or attending a trip versus a more well thought out request with concrete goals and metrics. Questions on the form include basic information like who they're hoping to engage, what locations or casework may be especially important to visit or highlight, and their general interest in different trip and activity styles. Is this an outdoor fishing and camping trip, or are they hoping for a multi-stop international trip with stays at higher end hotel accommodations? More specific questions will focus on identifying the goals and metrics that the trip success would be judged by if we were to move forward with it. And that in turn helps become our guiding light when planning the experience because we center those trip goals and purpose when determining which elements are or are not important to include. And it also gives me good data to use later down the road when I encounter a similar trip request. And finally, following the form submission, I'll set up a quick call with the submitting fundraiser to review those answers and ask any clarifying questions I have. And it's also an opportunity to do an initial evaluation and see if there's a better fit, such as targeting that donor for a pre-existing trip we've already committed to, or offering a previously ran and vetted private trip that would require less workload than something brand new. In addition to the initial intake form, we also use a high-level strategic rubric to further evaluate how the request does or does not fit within my team and department's larger goals. We use this to determine whether the request should move forward to the final approval process or be placed on our back burner. Beyond our events and travel teams, my broader team also includes a donor stewardship and donor writing team, and we all use the same strategic rubric. As I'm sure is common for all of us on the call, our teams receive way more requests than our capacities can handle. So this has established a consistent scale to rate the strategicness of any new project and guides us through a universal intake process. And I'll mention that our whole team using the same rubric in turn helps train and educate our colleagues on what kinds of information and requests we will be especially responding to. We're looking for requests that land on the 4 and 5 end of our scale and represent requests that are grounded in clear, achievable goals that will yield strong outcomes to support the development department's larger strategic plan. From a travel lens, this has been especially helpful for evaluating those private custom traveler requests that often come from major or principal gift level fundraisers. A 1 or 2 on this scale might look like a donor saying something like, hey, it'd be fun to bring some of my friends on an EarthJustice trip. Sounds cool, but it lacks any real concrete strategy. A 3 might look like a fundraiser saying they have a donor that's interested in travel and getting them into the field with us and our staff will be impactful for future solicitations, but it doesn't necessarily warrant a brand new trip. So in that case, replicating existing material in this context might look like considering inviting them to one of our explores or elevated trips that's already planned and in active recruitment. Or if a private trip may still be worth the effort, pointing them to examples of previously planned outings that might be easier for us to replicate for this audience and doesn't carry the same workload expectations that a brand new trip does. A 4 or 5, however, meets those critical strategic requirements, and the corresponding workload would be appropriate to move forward with given the potential outcomes. I'll also add that by incorporating specific mentions of needing to fit the department's larger pre-identified strategies, it also removes the personal element of determining whether or not to accommodate a request. I'm not saying it's not a personal reason that I'm saying no to your request, but rather pointing to grander departmental reasoning as we're not able to say yes currently. And final thing, this obviously does not mean that you are bound to move forward with any and all requests that meet the 4 or 5 scale rating. We're still limited by capacity and need to ensure those trips we've already committed to maintain their excellence. So rather, this gives us a good roster of strategic requests to evaluate when capacity allows us for new trip planning. And I'll talk about that process right now. So finally, when we do have the capacity to begin planning new trips, we have a formal decision-making framework to provide transparency, role clarity, accountability, and streamline the decision-making process, which we call RAPID. So the acronym stands for the 5 essential roles involved in the decision-making process, and also summaries of this text will be included on the next slide, so you don't have to worry about trying to read it all. R is for the recommend role. They're the person who drives the process by gathering relevant input and developing final recommendations. 80% of the rapid work happens here. It's also my main role in the trip determination process, in addition to wearing the performer's hat. A is for the agree role, someone whose buy-in is important for agreeing that the final recommendation is feasible, but doesn't carry that final decision-making power. P is for the perform role and signifies who is accountable for implementing the decision. They're the ones who have the best understanding of the feasibility and if it will or will not work on the ground. So those in the perform role should also have a formal process in the a formal role in the input process if they don't happen to be the recommender like myself. So besides me, who leads the charge internally at EarthJustice for performing, our travel planning partners like on-the-ground outfitters would also be considered in this perform role. I is for input and are those people who provide critical expertise or information that will help shape the recommendation. This should include those affected by the decision or involved in execution, like those in the perform role, so they can highlight opportunities, risks, and implications when determining whether or not to move forward. It's also an opportunity to infuse lessons learned from similar past trips, such as metrics gleaned from previous post-trip surveys, debrief meetings, periodic recaps, and the like. And then finally, D is for the decider. This is the person who makes the final decision and commits the organization to action. Ideally, this should only be one individual rather than a team or group of people, though, as you'll see in just a second, that's not always the case. So RAPID fits well as an acronym, but it's not necessarily how it plays out. Instead, it's more like, ERDIP or ERADIP, because it's key for the recommend role to gather all the necessary input and potential buy-in from the agreement role before sending it over to the decider. Some roles in the RAPID process may stay the same, like myself in the recommend and perform role, and our outfitter planning partners in the input and perform role, but we'll tailor the other role assignments based on the trip strategy and target audience. And that's especially true for the decider role. I can walk through an example of how I might use this. I'll start with gathering input from my key stakeholders, which always include our outfitter planning partners to determine if a trip is logistically feasible, talking to directors of our giving teams like Plan Gifts or Major Gifts to talk about large team major goals and strategies, as well as connecting with their individual fundraisers for input on how the trip might play a role for their specific donors. And then some others I might include could be like attorneys for input on whether the casework is appropriate for the audience, a forecast of the work's future, given our long planning timelines. Is it still going to be relevant? What's going to look like? And any other key clients or partners that we should include in the experience. And one note there, as you seek input from a variety of sources, some of their input might conflict from one another. So it's at the recommender's discretion on if or how they'll use the input gathered. The agree rule should be assigned sparingly and might not be necessary to use in all cases. And you should be really intentional about this so you don't unnecessarily bog down a process meant to formalize and expedite this decision-making process. Personally, my team director serves in the agree role when selecting trips, as she's able to monitor capacity and ensure strategic alignment between our event and travel offerings. I'll then share my final recommendation with the decider, detailing the input I received and how that informs my final recommendation. And that person looks different for our different programs. Like I said, ideally it would be one person, but I do use our mid-level and plan giving directors as co-deciders for the Explorers program because it's geared to both of their audiences, and luckily they work really well together. For our Elevate trips geared to major donors, that team's director is the decider role. And for any private trips, our VP of development is the decider. And finally, receiving an answer from our decider marks that official final decision, and I can really begin work in earnest on the trip planning process with our stakeholders. The last thing I want to highlight is it's also critical for the person in the recommend role to have credibility with the decider and also trust from everyone else involved in the process. If I didn't have the necessary credibility of expertise from the decider, like my VP of development, then there's no reason why she should accept my recommendation. And similarly, this would collapse if others in the process don't trust that I'm sincerely considering their input, the effects of this decision on their team's workload, capacity, and goals. And as such, it's important to, at the end of the process, go back and relay the final decision to all stakeholders to ensure transparency and open communication. Final thing I'll add, and then I'll toss it back to you, Catherine, is this framework can also work well for other decisions. For example, I use a similar framework for deciding which staff to send on our individual trips, and I'll tailor those roles in accordance to that objective as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
This is amazing, Matt. The framework that you guys have is really well structured, and I think people can probably adapt this to their own context. But I did have a question on like you accept ad hoc, like rolling ad hoc requests. Are people expecting you to get back to them very quickly, or are they expecting you to get back to them at those biannual reviews about your decision?
That's a good question. Kind of a both and. It depends on their request and who's requesting it. If it was somebody just passing along what they thought would be a good idea for one of our prepackaged journey, like the journeys that are planned explorers and elevate on a yearly basis, those I might hold on to. I'll have an initial call with them, but I'll hold on to that idea until we're ready to do the next suite of explorers and elevated trips. If it's a private trip request, I'll tend to meet with them faster, and then I'll add that to our roster of options. So they'll get some kind of request, but it's not any expectation that we're immediately going to jump on the opportunity
Mhm.
or begin any real work on it.
And then what happens to those like potential threes and fours of trips that don't make the cut for whatever year you're planning for travel? Do those go into some magical garden where they continue to flourish, or does someone have to like resubmit a trip
Mm.
request to have it reconsidered?
No, I'll keep them as long as they are still relevant and appropriate. The vast majority of requests will stay on our roster for consideration. So I'll bring that to our biannual planning process, or if when capacity allows for private trips, I'll kind of go to our rapid folks and list those ideas we've already had to see if any of those are bubble up to be the option, or if there's a new idea or trip request that should take its place. So for the most part, most of them are pretty evergreen. The only situation where we might not keep a trip request is if casework is no longer relevant, though
Hmm.
with litigation, it tends to be years long, so that's not as much of a concern. Or if it's like a private trip request and the target donor's physical abilities have changed or their
Got it.
interests have changed, something like that.
Okay. Well, with that, I don't want to take up too much space. I want to make sure other people have the opportunity to ask questions. You can either raise your hand and let you speak, or you can type it into the chat. I did see one question that was, how do you define well-performing trips that someone had asked? So that's to either of you.
Yeah, I can start with that. So we would label a trip well performing based on a few different data points. So um, did the trip have capacity, right? Did it reach its capacity for registrants? So that's an indication that there's a lot of interest in this particular topic or subject matter. Um, and the biggest thing though that we can determine is the post-trip survey results. So did they learn more about our work and our mission? Did they learn more about how they can participate and support the academy in the long term? Did they, we ask also questions like, did you enjoy the food and the hotel and the accommodations, right? Like the basic stuff. We've had some not great performance for some of our trips, and we've learned from that, and we grow from that, and we say, okay, well, where did we fall short, and how can we make this trip better next time? And then there's long-term results as well, which as a new travel program, relatively new, as we restarted our travel program, I will consider it to be a success if we have look back at this population of travelers and see how they perform long term, right? So are they with us for many, many years? Are they leaving a legacy gift or a planned gift to the academy? Are they increasing their support of the academy long term? And then we can really officially, put our stamp, the well-performing trip stamp on it. But it's kind of multifactorial, I think, to determine that.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, that's a good question. Since we don't have an explicit fundraising goal, that opens us up to what our success metrics could look like. Um, and some of those include obviously attendees maintaining or increasing their outright giving is a success if we learn about a planned gift bequest or they start the process of doing so. Our trip attendance has also served as an important touch point for like sussing out potential board or council members, people to bring into the organization. Um, One of my favorite success metric is if we do include clients or partners, if we hear that attendees start donating and supporting them directly, that's a big win for us. And then, of course, like there's the hard trip logistics, like Jared talked about, like did it fill? How quickly did it fill? Did people have a good time? And there's certainly been a couple trips where uh, either the audience or the style, activities, or location just didn't resonate. So that was a lesson learned. So we're learning more about what our audience is looking for, especially since we've expanded our donor audience in the last couple of years.
And then someone also wrote this question in that I think, Matt, you have a very clear, like tiered giving level types of trips. But Jared, I'm not sure your trips seem more open to the general public. Do you have tiered trips internally or private trips? Like, how do you categorize these journeys?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we are. I think it's part of our startup mode. We're just trying to figure out our footing around which trips to offer to which donor groups. The only trip that I think sort of feels a little bit more tiered is the one with our executive director that we offer to sort of a smaller group of folks. Um, but the rest of the trips, the only sort of qualification to join a trip is you either need to be an Academy member or an active donor with the Academy. Um, I think as demand grows, as we grow our program, we figure out the trips that are really popular and successful, we may start to sort of segment out the population for our marketing purposes and offerings to say, hey, if you want to go on this trip, you need to be a donor at X level. We're also talking about doing maybe just member-only trips, just for Academy members. Um, so we're ruminating on a lot of this, but right now, yeah, we're trying to be as open as possible to build our base and build our audience for our program.
So it's a little bit of a work in progress. It's still evolving. It's pretty young, your
Yeah,
program, Jared, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So through about, we'll say officially we're about 3 years into it. So
Okay, amazing.
um, yeah.
Well, if anyone has any last questions, you can just raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hand raised. I can't give you the instructions on how to do that. But I can say that I really appreciate Jared and Matt both. I raised my hand. Hold on. Sorry. I really appreciate both of you because you were incredibly generous with like the travel planning community with your knowledge. You're always willing to sit down and have conversations with people, answer questions people might have, and I just want to like applaud you for your generosity and time in this space. And I'm also really thrilled that both of you have really successful travel programs and that they are really contributing to your organization's mission. So first and foremost, just thank you for that. And if anyone does have any burning questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we will make sure that Matt and Jared get back to you with answers to that. We'll shoot you an email or whatnot. But with that, I just want to say thank you. And I also want to say thank you to Dana, who manages everything so seamlessly behind the stage. So she is my right-hand woman here. And I just want to say thank you and kudos to you for helping me with all this. And with that, I think I see questions coming in. Oh, it's all right. We'll get to those later. We'll send out emails, but thank you all so much. And we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you.
Perfect. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.